President Trump is expressing optimism just days before his summit with the North Korean leader Kim Jong Un. The two are going to meet in Vietnam later this week. This is their second summit in less than a year after their historic meeting back in June. It was there in Singapore that President Trump said he had a concrete commitment that North Korea was going to denuclearize. However, critics say there's been very little progress since then. In a tweet on Sunday, Mr. Trump pushed back on that assertion. He claims that Kim realizes the benefits of denuclearization, and he added that without weapons, North Korea could fast become one of the great economic powers anywhere in the world. The upcoming summit was also the focus of the Sunday morning talk shows, as you might expect. Here's some of what you may have missed.
I don't believe it would be a successful summit unless you had some kind of commitment on North Korea's part on denuclearization, dismantling, inspections, missiles, nuclear detonations. It seems the president is deflating expectations, and that's of concern. The concern, because I think what should come out of this summit is a framework for negotiations. My worry, George, is that this this summit may be a dud.
Relationships absolutely matter. It's important that the two leaders are able to effectively communicate. I've observed this over the past weeks and months. I've watched them exchange messages. I've watched our team understand the messages that the two leaders have provided. And now we're going to get to have a second summit where the two leaders can sit and have a frank, candid discussion, explore options, and I hope achieve what the ultimate end state is, creating a brighter future for North Korea and reducing the threat to the United States from the nuclear weapons that are today in North Korea.
Kim wants to have a personal meeting with Trump with hopes that he can, in fact, elicit concessions from President Trump that otherwise might not be possible if it was just our diplomats talking one-on-one. So I think there's apprehension, in fact, amongst President Trump's own diplomats heading into this summit. Nothing is clear, and I think as a result, we could run the risk that Kim is given concessions which are not accompanied by real concessions that the United States is receiving in return from Kim and his regime.
Jamal Simmons joins me now from Washington. He was actually a guest on Face the Nation this morning. He's now here with us. He's a host for The Hill TV Live. Hello, Jamal.
Hi, David. How are you? All
right, so let's talk about the last summit. I'm well, thank you. The Trump administration, after Singapore, declared that North Korea was on board with what he called total denuclearization. However, the president now says that he, quote, is in no rush to see that happen. What happened? Why the shift? I mean, that seems pretty extreme.
Yeah, this is part of the general problem with dealing with Donald Trump. He seems to be, he's not just slippery in how he does domestic relations, he's slippery even in international relations. And so I think our allies have raised the questions about not really understanding what the president's end goals are or feeling clued in to what those end goals are. So whatever the president says, I think that we could expect whatever he says to be true minus some percentage that we just find out doesn't hold up to water.
But do we know, Jamal, what walked him back? I mean, that's a pretty significant about-face change.
Well, reality probably walked him back, which is that the North Koreans don't have anything in their interest to get rid of their nuclear weapons. The reality is that this is the card the North Koreans have to play on the international stage. And so to give up nuclear weapons, they'd have to get an awful lot back in return. And this regime does not seem to be the kind of regime that is ready to do business with the West and become part of the international order.
Do we know if either side has some sort of non-negotiable demand that could, I don't know, stall the talks?
Well, you know, you could imagine that President Trump would have wanted them to chronicle all their nuclear weapons and stall the talks. It does not seem that that's what he's up to, though. What it seems like what's happening here is that the president likes to keep things pretty loosey-goosey right up until the end. And then he'll declare some victory over whatever it is he gets and sell it as if it's the greatest peace deal since, you know, the Rose Garden Accords in the 70s. But then we'll find out later that perhaps there's not as much to it as the president sold in the beginning.
Jamal, there was a tweet that the president sent out. I pulled it up on my phone. Chairman Kim realizes perhaps better than anyone else that without nuclear weapons, his country could fast become one of the great economic powers anywhere in the world. Great economic powers? Like, am I missing something?
It seems like what they call the hermit kingdom is not particularly poised for that.
Right.
It's not like the education, there's an education glut in the country where people are building apps and coming up with their own scientific discoveries. There doesn't seem to be the raw material for economic growth, even agriculture. I think they get a lot of their agriculture from other places. So I'm not sure exactly what the president means, but as it's so often true with the president, who really knows what exactly he means other than him?
And just for the record, people in North Korea are starved and tortured, just for the record,
That's right.
so we make that clear.
Right.
Sticking with foreign policy, this Friday marks the deadline, actually, for the U.S. and China to reach a trade deal. At this point, what does the timeline seem to indicate? I mean, are we talking about a compromise, or what is going to come of this trade deal?
This again is one of these situations where we talk to people who do trade for a living. What they will tell you is that no one really understands, again, what the president's end game is. What is it that he really wants out of this deal? Something else has occurred the president may not have realized when he started. The economics have changed on the ground in China. The president may think the U.S. has the biggest card to play here with the market, but the Chinese have really developed a lot of Chinese versions of American products and American services that allow them to be able to go on without the U.S. being involved. So some people have argued that this delay and these sanctions and the imposition of future sanctions has made the Chinese market more available, Chinese products more available in the Chinese market, and have attached the Chinese consumers to those Chinese products. So American products are having a tougher time. So that may be what's delaying the Chinese desire to get a deal as soon as possible. But again, like I said, there is a lot of concern, not just among the Chinese, but even some of the American corporate folks who are engaged in this. They just don't understand what the president's bottom line is here.
Mr. Trump's not afraid to go it alone on things, but on Friday he did say that let's say he floated the idea of bringing Democrats into the negotiations, saying he's thinking about asking Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to join him on the deals. I mean, is that a real thing?
Listen, I think that Nancy Pelosi is a patriot and Chuck Schumer is a patriot. They'd be happy to get involved to try to be helpful. What they're not willing to do, I'm sure, is just to co-sign something that Donald Trump is going to agree to that they don't necessarily like. There's something else that's at work here, too, on the Democratic side, which is that labor movement is still a very important part of the Democratic coalition. And although the president has been tougher on some of these trade deals, the labor movement really has not shown a willingness to exert any influence to get Democrats to go along with these trade deals. I mean, we even saw that with the NAFTA renegotiation. They have not seemed to get labor to sign up and say, yes, we are for a trade deal. We just have, that's something that I haven't seen in decades of being involved here, and I don't know that anybody's going to see it anytime soon.
Jamal, there could be a heck of a TV split screen this week with the president in Vietnam and Michael Cohen on Capitol Hill testifying. Now listen, this is a man who has lied. He's about to go to prison, but lawmakers are calling him to Capitol Hill. What are we expecting? And in all fairness, why are we to believe a man who's a proven liar?
Here is the problem. The president of the United States has been caught lying by the Washington Post thousands of times.
Fair.
Right? The president of the United States hired a national security advisor who had to plead guilty because he was doing deals with foreign governments while he was on deck to be national security advisor. The president of the United States picked a campaign manager who was in a foreign country meeting with a Russian intelligence operative affiliate and passing along campaign data. So none of these people are walking around with clean hands here.
Right.
So if you're this is like doing a mob investigation, what the prosecutors say, you end up having to talk to people who are some pretty scurvy type people just in order to find out whatever information is useful.
But
and
Jamal,
I think
what's
the
in it
president
for
of the United
Cohen?
States, who's a former, the president of the United States is a former casino owner in Atlantic City. And if you think about it that way, these are some of the people that casino owners might tend to spend more time with.
I'm just trying to figure out what's in it for Cohen. Like, why does he want to do this?
Oh, I think that Cohen is trying to find a way to redeem himself in the public eye. He talked about trying to become more of a John Dean type figure. So he's telling more of the Trump secrets. What the Trump affiliate position is to try to decompose Trump or Cohen and try to turn him just into a rank liar. The problem they have, though, is that he was the president's attorney for a decade or so. And so if he's not that good of a person, why did Donald Trump hire him?
So apparently the next day, Cohen's going to testify before it's going to be closed testimony to the House Intelligence Panel. What's he going to tell them that he can't say to all of us?
Gosh, wouldn't it be fun to know?
Right. But the point of those closed-door meetings are what? To talk about more classified intelligence stuff? I mean, I don't get it.
Well, maybe Cohen has some sense about what the relationships were, particularly around the president's involvement in Russia and his desire to try to build a Trump Tower in Moscow that we don't really know all the contours of. And again, at the heart of the Mueller investigation is the Mueller is trying to figure out whether or not the president of the United States coordinated or spent time talking to and planning with anybody in the Russian Federation that had ties to Vladimir Putin. And that might be the reason why the president has been doing all these things to try to get closer to Putin, because he has a financial interest, a financial stake. And if Cohen can shed some light on that, that may help the lawmakers determine whether or not the president of the United States is compromised by the Russian president.
Lastly, President Trump has nominated the next ambassador to the UN. Kelly Knight Craft is the name of the individual. Who is she?
Kelly Knight Craft is the current ambassador to Canada. She is also the wife of a very wealthy man who has donated over $1.6 million to Mitch McConnell and $1 million to the Trump, $1 million to the Trump inaugural committee. So she'll have some questions around her, the political connections that she has with Donald Trump. But she has been ambassador to Canada, and she was appointed to a foreign policy post by former President Bush. So she does, unlike many people in the Trump administration, she at least does have some foreign policy experience, and of the choices that may be available, the Democrats may decide she's the one that they're willing to sign up with.
Jamal Simmons, thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.